So welcome everybody, thanks. And I've got somebody calling me who's probably going to, yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name's Professor Tim Campbell. I'm a visiting professor of international management at the University of Northampton. I'm also involved, I look after the Doctorate of Business Administration program here for the Middle East intake. So I'm heavily involved with it. So thanks for joining me tonight. Welcome. What I'm going to do is take you through about 20-minute presentation that will just talk about the DBA program and some various bits and pieces of it. And then as soon as I've done that, we'll go through any questions that you might have. Okay, so let me get started once again. I'm going to start with Northampton itself. Northampton, because most of you probably haven't been there, I've just put a map up here with a big arrow pointing to it that shows where it is in England. It's about 100 kilometers north of London, about an hour by train, and it's an old historic town that's been around for many, many years throughout English history. And on the outside, just on the outskirts of Northampton, you used to find the University of Northampton. But the university actually built an entirely new campus that opened just 2 years ago, right in the middle of town now. And that's what this picture is here, just a little bit of the new campus. It's a very new, very technologically advanced campus on this lovely greenfield site. So it really is impressive. And at the university itself on campus, there's the Senate building. And on one of those floors, you'll find the doctoral students research area. And that's an area where as doctoral students, if you go to campus, you can go there and spend as much time as you want there, and that's your space on campus, should you ever need it. A little bit of information about the university itself. You will, I'm sure, go onto the university's website. I'm sure you already have been, and you'll find out lots and lots of information about it. So I've just picked out a couple of things. The first being that education in Northampton dates back an awfully long time, back to the 13th century, in fact. But the modern University of Northampton's origins begin about 100 years ago, about the 1920s, when it used to be a technical college. And then it's developed over the years to be the University of Northampton, as it is today, with about 14,000 students and 1,500 staff. It has the Teaching Excellence Framework Gold Award. What that is a ranking that's done by the UK government. It's mandatory. That ranks universities in their teaching excellence, either gold, silver, or bronze. Northampton is there in the gold tier. So that's an important ranking to be aware of. It's one that's officially done by the UK government. When you read these rankings, and there are so many of them, usually done by newspapers, and some of them more, using very different sorts of criteria, and sometimes a bit confusing. The only ones you need to pay attention to are the official ones done by the UK government on the universities. And that's the Teaching Excellence Framework and the Research Excellence Framework. So that's just a little about the university in Northampton. What you're really here to discuss is the doctorate itself. So the question I get asked most often is, what is a doctorate? And there are two types. Well, firstly, a doctorate is considered a terminal degree, meaning it's the highest degree that you can obtain, which is generally, as you would know, a bachelor's, a master's, and then you go up to the doctorate degree. But there are two types of doctorates. One is a professional doctorate, and these degrees are for people who are primarily engaged with the profession. So these people, for example, the one you'll be most aware of, I'm sure, would be when you go and see your doctor. Something's wrong with you and you go and see a medical doctor. That doctor has a professional doctorate, a doctorate of medicine. They're not primarily involved in research, they're primarily involved within a profession. And then we have these professional doctorates for people involved in engineering, in pharmacy, in education, and almost all the different types of professions. And the professional doctorate for business and management people is, of course, the DBA, the Doctorate of Business Administration. Now we have the other type of doctorates for people who aren't primarily engaged within a particular profession, but are primarily engaged with research or academia. And the most well-known of these would be a PhD. And these people are people you normally find in universities or research institutions and these types of things. So they're different types of doctorates, but they're academically equivalent. They're both at the same level. The only difference is they have different audiences and different outcomes. They're both research-based degrees. When you do the DBA, you will be doing a big piece of research, but it will have to have an applied practical outcome, whereas a PhD in business and management could be purely theoretical. So they're research-based degrees, but they need to have different outcomes. DBA is more practical. And then when you finish your doctorate, of course, you will be indeed called a doctor. Just to finish that question between the difference between a DBA and a PhD, because it is important, especially now that you're thinking about going, hopefully will be going on the doctoral journey, it's important to understand the difference between the two. So that's why I'm going to read this slide out, and it's a bit wordy, so I'm going to read it for you. But I just think it makes a nice point about the differences between the two types of the doctorate. So the PhD, starting from the top, the PhD programs in business focus intensively on preparing candidates to conduct highly specialized scholarly research. They focus on the development of new theory in management, economics, and related fields. Most PhD in business administration graduates lead to careers as university researchers and professors or as senior researchers in business or government, whereas the DBA programs focus on the application of theory rather than on the development of new theory. The Doctor of Business Administration, by virtue of its focus on the application of theory, has more practical applications and managerial settings than the PhD. I think that just nicely makes the difference between a research-based doctorate and the professional doctorates in business and management. Okay, let's get on then. So what sort of topics do DBA students research? It can be absolutely anything in business and management. And here's a selection of some of the topics that current students are doing. So anything from a critical examination of a performance management system to leadership styles to governance in the public sector, value chain, high-tech startups, resolving conflict, knowledge transfer, all of these types of things. It can be anything business and management. And the students will almost always do something that relates to their profession. So you'll find a supply chain professional will usually do something in supply chain, and they'll pick a topic that they know is a real issue for them and for their organization or their industry at least. A human resource professional will usually do a human resource topic. A marketing person will usually do something in marketing. It tends to be the way it works out. That doesn't have to be the case. If you were a marketing professional and you were desperately interested in business ethics, for example, you could do a proposal on that, but it's just a bit harder because you don't have such a grounding in that topic that you do if you're actually working within that topic. And just one other thing on this, what I'm noticing with proposals coming through to me recently is I'm seeing a lot more on things like social responsibility, sustainability, small businesses. I'm seeing quite a bit on that as well. So anyway, the topics are of course up to you. They'll usually fit with your professional field, and they can be anything in business and management. All right, let's look at the timetable. So how the DBA used to be taught is that there were 2 years that were taught, the first 2 years, where you learn everything you need to know about doing research, doing business research. And here are the modules here. There's 6 of them. So they're spread over the first 2 years. And they're all 3 days, except for the first one and the last one, which are 4 days long. But they're spread over the weekend, or at least the weekend here in the Middle East, usually a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday. And then how it would work is that the professor from the University of Northampton would fly out and teach face-to-face here in the UAE. But of course, with the situation we're all facing at the moment, it's running exactly the same way, the same professors, but instead of face-to-face, they're being run virtually. And the university has its own, uses specialist virtual classroom software. So it's still face-to-face, you'll still sit down in front of your computer for the full 3 or 4 days, and you'll have your tutor, your professor in front of you, just like I am, live, but it will be virtual until we can get back to those face-to-face workshops, which I'm afraid I just don't know. I don't think any of us knows when that's going to be able to happen. So until further notice, this is how we do it. So the program still runs exactly as it did. That's the only difference. You're looking at your tutor through a computer rather than having the person standing in front of you. And just take a look at that start date as well. Intake 11, would you believe? This is the 11th intake of the Middle East, which will start on that first workshop at the end of May. Now, that may seem a long time away, but it's definitely not, because you need to have your application documents in at least 6 weeks before. I believe 6 weeks before is the absolute cutoff, and preferably a long time before that. So I'll talk about the application documents in a moment, but you need to be looking and thinking about these now and getting them as quickly as possible so you get through the application process in time to start. So as I mentioned, so you begin the program, you do 2 years with your workshops, then the second 2 years you work on your thesis. So you work with 3 supervisors, a director of studies, a first supervisor, and a second supervisor, and you'll go and you work on your big research project, your thesis, which you'll hand in at the end of that 2 years, and your journey is done. All right, that's the program. Assessment. These modules have all various types of assessments, and your professors will tell you exactly what they want you to see. It can be anything from an essay to a presentation to a research report or a reflective report, whatever. No exams, of course, not at this level. All some form of assessment. And then when you get to that thesis stage, that's when you put your big document together, a 40,000-word thesis. And that's examined by a viva voce examination, which means an oral examination. And that's the only time where you actually have to go to the campus at the University of Northampton, is for that oral examination of your thesis. So there's lots and lots of support on this program. And the students on it really do get they get a lot from the workshops and the tutors, and also the other people in their intake as well. You've got your international DBA program leader, that's a lady called Hala, and you'll meet her at the interview stage. She interviews the candidates along with a specialist in whatever field the candidate is thinking of researching. You've got the local leader, who's me. I live here in Dubai. Every module has an expert tutor. You have those 3 supervisors I mentioned. There's administration from Northampton and all of the universities, Northampton's administration, and they have an entire doctoral school dedicated just to doctoral students. That also has some fabulous workshops that you can access virtually. There's the Northampton Integrated Learning Environment. That's the virtual learning environment we use. That's the place where we post all that, where you'll find the virtual classroom, where we post all the materials you'll need. And there's an extensive online library. All the materials, all the library you'll need, you will access virtually through the university's library. So loads and loads of support. Entry requirements. These are, entry is important. Well, let me tell you just the standard requirements first, and then I'm just going to mention a bit more about the proposal and the interview stage. So the entry requirements, these are fairly standard. Hold a master's degree in a business-related subject, ideally completed within the last 10 years. But if it's longer than that, as long as you've kept your knowledge up to date by doing various training courses or something that you can evidence at work, then that's usually fine. You need to have a minimum of 5 years work experience, at least some of which should be at senior level, and employed in a leadership management role capable of supporting the program outcomes. Because a lot of the assessment you'll do will ask you to reflect upon your own practice and your own organizations. So you need to be working with them to be able to do that. So they're the entry requirements. Then when you apply, the CV is fairly standard. Then you'll write a personal statement, basically saying why you want to do the DBA. There'll be 2 references. Again, best if one's an academic and one's a professional reference. But if it was a long time ago that you did your master's degree and you can't get an academic reference, then we can always just look at 2 professional references. Degree certificates and transcripts, okay, that's all fairly standard. And evidence of English language ability if you're asked to do so. But if you did your master's in English, then it's unlikely you will be. Now, these next 2 are important. You will, once that's done, you need to give a research proposal with these application documents. There's a Northampton research area form. It's a pro forma that one of the consultants at Stafford will send to you that you need to fill out. It's only about 1,000 words, but it's a proposal about what do you want to research when you do this program. Now, in no way are you going to be bound to it once you're actually on the program, but it's incredibly important. So at the application stage, I'll come back to the slide because I just want to, for these reasons, they want a proposal at this stage because they want to know if you're capable of studying at doctoral level. So they will look at the quality of that. Perhaps a quality system that nobody's ever really heard of before, then it might be difficult to supervise. So if it's all the main, all the main subjects, it's fine. But I just want to emphasize this proposal. You must spend some time on it because it is a competitive process getting onto the program. About 50% of those who go through the entire application process and interview will be accepted. So don't think that you can just spend a little bit of time on this and then you'll sail through. You really need to dedicate some time to this and really think about your proposal, okay? So the proposal is important. And just on here, then once you've done the proposal, you'll have an interview. And the interview is also important. You have to know your proposal very well, and you have to be able to defend it. You have to be able to say why this is an important area for research, how it fits within the DBA, these types of things. And the interview is conducted by the program leader, Hala, for the DBA, and a specialist. So if your proposal's in HR, it'll be a HR person, or if it's in accounting, it'll be an accountant, whatever. Okay. So for your application, please, do spend some time on it. In the proposal, they're going to look at, can it make a practical contribution? Can the applicant reference using Harvard? Can you write a very brief literature review and have a basic understanding of research methods? Now, the good thing is all business and management master's graduates, you should already have those skills. But I think what happens is a lot of people don't spend enough time at the application stage and make their application and particularly proposal and interview really strong. So my advice is really do spend some time on it. When you're doing your proposal, maybe spend, I would think, somewhere between 10 and 20 hours I would like to see on that proposal. That's not long. That's only, do a few hours a week for 5 weeks or something like that. But make sure you do spend the time. Okay, enough about application. For the fees, please have a look at Stafford's website because the fees can change between intakes. So make sure you've got the absolute latest fees, have a look there, and you will see that they are very reasonable fees for a program of this type, which is taught with fly-in faculty when we can get back to that. But again, it's not an online program, it is a taught program from the campus itself. Just a few last things from me. Why should you do a DBA? It's an investment in your future, in your academic and professional fields, the highest qualification in business and management. Contribute to business management practice. It would be expected your thesis would be published. international and local supervision, local workshops from leading international faculty. So some bullet points. And a last final word from me, completion of the Northampton DBA will set you apart as an expert able to lead and manage at the highest levels. You would have made a unique contribution to your field and developed outstanding analytical, critical, creative and reflective skills so needed in today's business world. It really does set you apart. There are very few people take the doctoral journey and complete a doctorate. Being one of those really does and will set you up. All right, question time. There's all the bits and pieces from me. I can see already I've got lots of questions, so I'm going to, to type any questions you have, just use the question on the right there, question box, and I can see lots of you already have. So I'm going to open these up and get started. Right, yeah, let me see where I'm at. Let's start. All right, so question here is for somebody who stopped their DBA studies at another university. Can I get exemptions for the modules completed to join this DBA program? The short answer to that is no. The university doesn't give exemptions onto the DBA program because it's important to start from the start and make your way through with the rest of the intake, and the facilitated modules tend to build on each other. So that's why they tend not to have exemptions from places from other universities. But on very rare occasions, they might consider it. But generally, you would need to start there from the start. Question here is, will my degree state online distance learning? No, it won't. And that's really important. This isn't an online degree, remember? It's a part-time taught degree. Next question about, I've completed my master's degree about 13 years ago, but have extensive senior management experience. Will I be able to apply? Yeah, that should be no problem. I mentioned in the presentation that they, strictly speaking, they say your master's degree needs to be within 10 years, but if it's a little bit older, it will be fine as long as you've been doing some training courses at work or something like that. That's just showing that you're keeping your knowledge up to date. And here's a question about the interview, and I know I've been over the interview quite a bit, but it won't hurt me to say again that you do need to prepare for that interview. They're going to ask you all about your research proposal. They're going to ask you, why you want to do a DBA. They're even going to look at your research proposal and say, look, you've said you want to do this using quantitative methods. Why might that be? So you do need to prepare for it. Think about the questions that you might be asked. This is a question, can this program be completed in less than 4 years? No, it takes 4 years and you will need all that time, but a maximum of 6 years. You cannot take longer than 6 years. The duration of each module. So there's 6 modules in the first 2 years. So if you split that up, that means there's a module about every 3 months, something like that. Oh, that's a very good question. When will the workshops resume again in the UAE? Will I be penalized in any way if I miss one? Well, we hope the workshops will be back as soon as possible, but I just can't even guess when that might be at the moment. As you all would know, it's very terribly difficult to know. So, as I say, the modules are being run virtually, which is working fine actually. It's still exactly the same program, just the difference between how they're being delivered. And then, will I be penalized in any way for not making a workshop? You must make the workshops. They're so important, especially the first one. If you miss the first workshop, you'll just automatically be pushed to the next intake. So you must make that first one. But, if something happens and you can't make it, as long as you let the tutors know that something important is happening, you can't make it, then that's fine. You'll carry on and do the best that you can. But the general rule of thumb is make those workshops. Oh, this is a very ambitious question. I've got a question from Amina. Would it be possible that I can finish the DBA in 3 years? Wow. No, I mean, you couldn't, because the first 2 years must take 2 years because you need to follow the timetable. Then you get to the second 2 years where you do your thesis. I just couldn't see it being done in a year because there's different stages to there and different approvals you need to get. So no, you're better to take the whole 4 years and make sure you do your very best job and pass. That's the absolutely key important thing. That's the most important thing. Doing it a little bit shorter is not going to help, and then you don't pass. What you need to do, take the time that you've got, make sure you pass. That's the key thing. All right, thanks everybody. I think I've managed to do all those questions, and after a false start of not being able to be heard, I think everyone actually managed to hear me in the end. So I do hope I will see you on the program. Let me just put up my email. If you do think of anything else you want to ask me, I'll leave that up there, and you're absolutely more than welcome to get in touch. Also, bear in mind, if you do a draft proposal and you want me to have a look at it, I'm more than happy to do that as well. You just email it straight to me at that address, and I'll get back with my comments. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.